everybody, welcome back to Taji's World of Books, and I want to talk to you about what I've been reading over the last week. Hey you guys, so welcome back. So I have got a bunch of books that I have read over the last week. I think there are about 12 books in this wrap up, so let's kind of get into it without further ado. Okay, so the first series that I want to talk to you about is the Corinne Michaels, the Arrowood Brothers, and me and Corinne Michaels, let me just say this. I think I have a love-hate relationship with Corinne. I absolutely love her stories. They are super angsty. They're small town romances. Usually they have a military bend. It's usually a large group of brothers, and it's their relationships with their women and how that sort of comes about. What I struggle with is that Corinne writes her characters in a way that the men always have to acquiesce to everything that the woman wants. And in some ways I want that, and in some ways I don't. I would like to see an equal balance between the two characters, both fighting for each other and working hard to be the person that they should be in order to be a part of this relationship. And Corinne Michaels often writes in a way where the guys are kind of like these dudes that are like, I'm independent, I'm a kind of an asshole, I'm gonna do my own thing, I don't need anybody, I'm gonna do it like I've never settled down, I'm gonna be like a little playboy kind of situation. And then they find themselves with this girl, and they have to work really, really, really hard to be with her. And if anything, she is kind of a little bit unrealistic in her demands. But nonetheless, obviously, I keep reading, I keep buying her books. I've pretty much read almost everything that she has written, so I must like her. I must like it. I must be there for every moment of it. And the Arrowood Brothers is no different. It's so fun. It's fast-paced. I also like it because she ties it into the worlds of all of her other series. So if you've read her other series, you're going to get cameos from some of like Milo that was from some of her other series, and they come in. So whether it be because of a military bend, and so they served in the military, or it's baseball and they served in they played baseball to get professional baseball together, or they're in like a real estate tycoon in New York, and you know they're tying into other series. You're going to definitely see the first 3 series that she's written. There's a tie-in to each of these books, so that's kind of cool in that respect because you get to hear how all those other characters are doing. So having said that, we're going to cover multiple tropes. These are a solid 4 out of 5. They're a solid 4 in spice and definitely a 4 in angst. The first in the series is Come Back to Me, or Come Back for Me. And this is a second chance romance between Connor and Ellie. And in this particular book, Connor and Ellie have a hookup, a one-night stand. No names, no communication, no nothing, just one night of pure bliss. And that night is a night that they can never forget. And something like 8 years later, they cross paths again because Connor has moved back to town. Connor moves back to town, as well as all the Arrowood brothers, because their father has passed away. Now, it was the father and the mother. They were together. The mother died many years before, and the mother was like the pride and joy of the entire family. And she died of cancer early on. And when she died, it broke the father. And when it broke the father, he turned to alcoholism to retreat into his depression. But when he retreated into his depression, he treated all 4 of his sons horribly, and he was abusive to them, and he was a horrible father to them after the death of his wife. Okay, so the father now dies, and he owns a dairy ranch and a cattle ranch in the middle of like Pennsylvania. And in order for the brothers to inherit, they all have to come back and spend 6 months on the ranch, fixing it up, doing things, and every brother has to do a turn, or else it will be auctioned off, and the proceeds of like this multi-million-dollar ranch is going to go to the proceeds to charity. And so the brothers are like, this bastard, I can't believe that he's done this to us, and like whatever. So they're like, fine, if we want to get our inheritance, we got to do it. So Connor, you're up, you're first. So Connor has to do his 6-month stint. And so when he does his 6-month stint at the ranch, at the Arrowood Ranch, then that's when he runs into Ellie. And he runs into Ellie through her daughter. And her daughter is 8 years old, and she is a very precocious and talkative little girl, and he finds her in a treehouse that is on his property, and it's a treehouse that he and his brothers often played at. And so this is a second chance romance. This book covers abuse, and it covers a domestic violence. So if you are sensitive to those types of subject matters, pay attention to that. But the story sort of all comes together from there. The Arrowood brothers have a secret. Something happened on the same night that he met Ellie, and so he was leaving to go into the military. And so when he left to go into the military after the one night that he spent with Ellie, then that's where you see a crossover with some of the other characters from the other books. So that's kind of cool. And like I said, it's a second chance romance. It's fantastic. It's really good. I really loved this book so much. I loved how Connor treated Ellie. I loved Ellie for how she had to overcome her fear and be honest with herself and be true with herself. I like that there was no hidden stuff. Like, it was all like above board. It was just a really fast, fun read. So I think you should check it out. The next is Fight for Me, and Fight for Me is Sid and Declan, and Sid and Declan have been together for years and years and years. This is a second chance romance, and they've been together for years and years and years. They've always been each other's, like, the first for everything. They've just been together for years, and everybody always thought that they were going to end up together. And one night, Declan basically says, forget me, don't ever think about me again. I'm not the person for you. And he leaves, and he breaks Sid's heart. And so they go on their separate ways, and then some things happen. You know, Declan has to do his 6-month stint. He's there. There is some other circumstances that go down, and now Sid and Declan have to face some stuff, and it's their story, and it's super angsty, and it's super fun. But at the same time, Sid does some stuff that I'm just like, really? Because she's just like, she makes some rash decisions, and I know why she's making the rash decisions, and I know why she's doing what she's doing, but ultimately she's going to get hurt as a result of it, but she's only hurting herself. And Declan recognizes that, but he's too stubborn to do anything about it. And so some other people have to kind of step in and help them. It's so fun. It's so really good. Even though, like, Sid, I was just like, Sid, what are you doing? But it was really good. So again, 4 in terms of overall, 4 in spice and 4 in angst. Very good. Then the next book is The One for Me. And The One for Me is... This is Devney and Sean's story, and this is a best friend romance in that Devney and Sean have been best friends since the time they were little. Everybody else around them sees that they are in love. They are the only ones who don't see that they're in love. They have gone on and dated other people and coached each other through their other relationships, but they have never found that one person because they're looking for each other and they don't recognize it. Sean is a professional baseball player, and Devney has a secret, and she has ties to this town. It's called Sugarloaf. She has ties to Sugarloaf, and she won't leave, and nobody understands why. They think that she's waiting for Sean, but now that Sean is there and doing his 6-month stint, he doesn't understand why she's there either. And so some secrets are revealed, and it is so fun. They're my favorite couple outside of Connor and Ellie, and it is a very, very good read. And this is a 4, 4, and a 4. And then the final book in the series is Stay For Me, and this is Brenna and Jacob. Jacob is the youngest brother. This was my least favorite book in the series. Jacob is a actor, like a Marvel actor, like think of Jason Momoa in Aquaman. He's like that type of dude. He's an actor, and Brenna is a military widow. Her husband passed away in a military operation, and now she is left with 2 children to raise on her own, and so she moves to Sugarloaf to be closer to his family so that she can get support and help from his family. And so it is their romance and their story, and it's fine and it's okay, but it wasn't as good as the other. So I gave this a 3, and in terms of angst, I gave it a 3 and a spice of a 3. Okay, so then the next book that I want to talk about is Catherine Anderson's Annie's Song. And this was such a sweet story. It was such a fantastic romance. I absolutely loved it. I know I talked with Jen from the Book Refuge about this, and that, you know, because this is written in 1890, and it is written in a voice that's very different, that doesn't float today. So if you go into it knowing that there may be some sexualization, there may be some views of women and how women are treated, but also we can't judge the past with today's standards. So recognize that it's 1890. Okay, so the story is about Annie Trimble, and Annie Trimble is the town idiot. And she is viewed as a dummy, and she is viewed as just like something's wrong with her. She had a fever as a child, and as a result, she never developed correctly. And she is abused her entire life by her family and by the townspeople. She's just abused and discarded. And one day she is at the river swimming, like, because she likes to wander in nature, and she's swimming at the river, and 3 town boys come up and a assault happens. And so check out the trigger warnings. And an assault happens, and as a result, she is thrust into the path of Alex Montgomery. And this whole story is really about Alex's understanding of what's going on with her. So let me say this. The first half of the book, I want to throw the book across the room. I am so mad at her family. I am so disgusted with her mother. I'm so disgusted with the housekeeper or the nurse that Alex hires. I'm really upset with Alex because Alex is not thinking for himself and stepping up and trying to really understand what's going on with Annie, but rather he's seeing her as a burden and a circumstance that he has to take care of. And even then, when he senses something is going wrong, he's acquiescing to her parents. And I'm like, she's your situation. Like, you don't need to be acquiescing to her parents. And I'm trying not to divulge too much. And so, but the first half of the book, I was just really wanted to throw the book across the room because I was just like, oh my God, this is not okay. And the things that they say about her and how they treat her, and you get to hear, you're in her head, so you hear her POV, but you also hear Alex's POV as well. And so then at the second half of the book, when things take a turn and Alex understands what's going on, it is just fantastic. It is a really wonderful, sweet story that I loved so much, that I thought was really, really good. My understanding is that people either love this book or they hate it. They hate it because they don't like the sexualization and they don't like the voice that he uses and how he thinks about her. But again, I think he was quite forward thinking for a man of 1890, especially what he does at the very latter part of the book, in an effort to support Annie. So I thought that this was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and I do not like historicals, and I absolutely love this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 star. In terms of spice, like, it's not spice. It's not like, that's not what it's there for. But once it gets there, it gets there. So I'm going to give it a 3 for spice. And in terms of angst, I'm going to give it a 4 because I just was so disgusted with the family. Now, her mother does make a redemption arc. And we don't hear much about the father after that. But again, you know, how women's roles were treated and how they acquiesced to their husbands and the things that they were expected to do is really center stage in this book. But it's supposed to be center stage because that's part of the story and part of the angst of the story. So take it for what it is. But this is Annie's song by Catherine Anderson. And I thought that, you know, and I loved it on the back that she has an amazing talent to tell like tender, passionate, earthly love stories that really touch the core of your soul. And that is really truly what this book does. So I think you should read that. Again, I read another historical. I don't know what's going on with my life, but clearly I needed some historical in my life. And so this is by Jennifer Ashley, and this is The Madness of Lord Ian McKenzie, and it is fantastic. This is a representation of autism or spectrum, but again, in British gentry society and at a time when that wasn't identified. So Ian had a very difficult upbringing, you know, as being part of the McKenzie clan. He is, you know, he is viewed as a troublesome child. He was viewed as a meddlesome child, a bother, you know, odd. He just had a lot of problems. He was thrown into an insane asylum, and he was subjected to strappings and beatings and electric shock and ice therapy and all kinds of things to cure his madness. And when he came out of the asylum, he didn't speak for 3 months. So they really truly believe that he is mad. There is a rumor that is surrounding Lord Ian that he murdered 2 women. He came in contact with the love interest in this book, and when she is engaged to Lord Mather, and they're at the opera, and she is engaged to Lord Mather, and slips Beth a note, and because he's very enamored by her, he slips Beth a note, and he's like, he's a blackguard, he's a terrible guy, you don't want to marry him, you regret it and rue the day if you do decide to marry him, because he's a womanizer and he's got other kinks. And so Beth is kind of taken aback, but she hears it and she basically acknowledges, they talk, she is very taken with him as well. He very upfront says, you know, I've got some issues and I'm not normal and I don't think about things in a normal way, but she's very intrigued by him. And to make a long story short, she breaks off her engagement to Lord Mather. And so their story sort of ensues. And it is truly a beautiful story between Beth and Ian and their fight to love each other, to be honest with each other, to be sincere, to fight past differences, and to be together at all costs. And Beth is not going to allow Ian to succumb to the rumors and to be treated any differently than anybody else in society. And Ian is going to go to the ends of the earth to protect Beth, to keep her safe, to be with her, to love her. He's obsessed with her. And it's such a beautiful story, and it's so fantastic that I went out and got all the other books, because I definitely want to hear the stories of all the other McKenzie brothers. The next book is going to be between Isabel and one of the other McKenzie brothers, and I can't wait to read that. I'm really fascinated and excited to read it. Jennifer Ashley just wrote, like, this book was a great balance between being a little bit gray, a little bit dark, a little bit mysterious, a little bit of like whodunit, tied in with romance, all plopped into like gentry and English nobility and society in the Scottish Highlands. I loved it. It was so, so good. So I gave it a 5 out of 5 star. I gave it a 4 for angst, and I gave it a 4 for spice. It is really, really good. I think that you guys should love it. And I, you know, like I said, I don't like historical romances. Like, that's not my deal, but this one did hit all, like, it ticked all the boxes for me. So I don't know. It was just really good. Okay. So I'm just going to really quickly talk about Karen Rose. So this is Every Dark Corner, and this is Monster in the Closet. And again, this is the same as it has been in the past. It's about an FBI specialist as well as an FBI specialist, and it's Decker. And this one is for Griffin Decker Davenport. And also it's a human trafficking case, and they're following trafficking. He's falling in love with Special Agent Kate Coppola, and they're trying to rescue 2 girls that are being trafficked, and they're following the story. It's always about, it's a thriller, it's a suspense, it's, you know, it's a deep dive into the dark underbelly of what trafficking is. And the 2 girls, one girl is 18-year-old Mallory Martin, and Mallory was taken and trafficked as a young girl, and she was put on the internet, and I think they called her like Sunshine Sally. And so she gets accosted by men in grocery stores or wherever she goes, because she's given much more free reign, because he has all these tracking devices and things that he's watching her. But she's terrified that if she steps out of line because of all the tracking devices, he's gonna know, her trafficker, and her sister Macy, who he's also holding captive, but she is placed in another home, is gonna suffer the consequences of her bad behavior. And she's learned this from past experiences. So as a result, Mallory is trying to figure out a way to get this information to the authorities so that she doesn't get caught, she doesn't get her sister Macy killed, but she can also save the other children that are being trafficked. So that's the premise of the story. And then in the meantime, Decker, who's following the case, is also falling in love with Kate in the background. And so it's fun, it's fascinating, really, really well done. You know, and the thing that's really interesting is that you know who the trafficker is, you know the circumstances around it, you just don't know who he is in society and what his real position is and what his name is. And so that's what is revealed to you over time. So I gave this a 4. All of Karen Rose's books are 4s, for sure. They're all 4s. The spice ratings are all like 2s. They're not like super spicy, but it's fine. And the angst is anywhere between like a 3 is about a fair rating for that. So then the next one, this is Monster in the Closet, and this one is about Clay. Now this one is one in which we know who the we know who the killer is right away, up front. We know who he is. And this Clay, through multiple books in this series, has been trying to find his daughter Sienna. And this is when he finds his daughter Sienna, but he doesn't find her. She comes in as a child specialist to work on a horse ranch under the name of Taylor Dawson. And so really it's about Taylor Dawson coming out as Clay's daughter, Clay getting to know her. All of the other characters that we've come to know are rallying around Clay and pissed off that this girl has come out of nowhere when he's been searching for her for a very long time. And then there's another backstory of two young girls that Taylor is working with where their father is trying to kill them. And so we all know that this is what's happening, but the story is unfolding, and how does it ultimately work out? And it's really fast paced. It's really fascinating. It's a great read. It's a fun read. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4. It's a solid book for sure. And then lastly, I just want to talk about Pepper Winters. This is Unseen Messages. This is a very different story than what Pepper Winters typically writes. And the first half of the book is a bit slow going, but once it gets going, it is a fantastic read, and Pepper Winters did it again. So this is 2 strangers, a plane, and many unseen messages. And so what I mean by that, and it's really fascinating because at the beginning of the book, Pepper Winters writes a sort of intro, a foreword, or a message from the author where she says, this story was inspired by my flight home in 2015. Each thing that happened to me. Each issue and fear was my own experience, right down to the clothes that Estelle wears, to what she shoves in her pocket. The complete truth. What happened afterwards, well, I'll let the characters tell their story. So this is fantastic. It is a forced proximity situation, and it is about a slow burn romance between Estelle and Galloway. And I don't want to tell too much. Well, let me say this. It is, I'm not going to say that. It's a forced proximity. And there are several players that are involved. Estelle is a singer-songwriter, and she became a singer-songwriter because her best friend took her music and put it on YouTube, and she became an instant sensation. So she is a singer-songwriter. Galloway is a engineer, and he is going to build like habitat, borders, whatever. Like he's going to build homes for underpoverished and impoverished families in third world countries. And so they cross paths at an airport, and it becomes a forced proximity situation. And it is so fantastic. It is so good. Galloway has a secret, and he doesn't want to reveal his secret. And you start to hear Galloway's story as it's told current versus past, in knowing what he did and what happened to him and what he's so afraid of letting other people find out. And Estelle has to write in her journal, and she has to express herself through her words and her writings and her poetry and her songs. And it's so good. It is just so good. Like I said, it's very different than what Pepper Winters normally writes, but it is, and it's like when you get all these unseen messages. They're in an airport. She's trying to get on an airplane. She's stunted every step of the way. Things are happening that are preventing her from going to where she needs to go. And she's like, do I listen to this? What do I do? Is this a sign? Is this a message? It is so fantastic. I gave it a 5 out of 5 star. I gave it a 5 for angst, and I gave it a 5 for spice. It is wonderful. And especially the epilogue and how it ends up and where things go, it just doesn't get any better than this. And so having said that, you guys, that is all that I have for today. Please let me know if you read any of these things and if you enjoyed them as much as I did and what your thoughts are about that. And as is always the case, if you want me to review a particular book or you want to recommend a book for me, put it in the comments below and I will add it to my TBR and I will eventually get to it. And so I'm going to ask you now to do all the things. Hit the like button because it really helps me. Hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time I upload a new video, which is generally 2 to 3 times a week. And that's all I have for today, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.